Macintosh. So one of the cases that we have is one based on a design company. Now, we all know that design companies like to use Macintoshes because the software for Macintoshes is usually specially written to run well on a Macintosh as a sort of design or do media type computer. So this company is thinking of, they've had a bunch of computers blow. So they now they're faced with a decision: buy new Vista machines, which they can pirate software from, or switch to a totally unknown system where they'll have to pay for everybody and retrain everybody. They call in American consultants to tell them what they should do. Those are our students, who have to then help them decide what is going to happen. And so you get a number of threads in this case running. First of all, which system is better? And most students have strong feelings about this. And in addition, you have the overlay of them having to advise this Russian company, which is very much wedded to using Windows machines because of their desires not to pay for any software. So you've got sort of two arguments going on at once, or two discussions going on at once.
So Nintendo's story was this. Nintendo, as you know, everybody knows, Nintendo has the computer game now. At that time, we used to call video game. When they started to sell in Japan, they used new technology using, and then started to sell at very cheap price. It became a big hit. They came to the United States. When they came to the United States, toy stores did not want to sell it because they didn't think it's going to be a good toy, I guess. So they couldn't sell the toys. So what they ended up doing is going to the electricity appliances store, like Best Buy or those kind of place, to sell as electronic devices, entertainment devices, or something like that. Then from there, they do some market strategies, such as publishing the magazine for game users, or set up the little corner in the store where the customer can actually play the game in the store and experience its fun. So originally, because Nintendo's video game was a new stuff, they had a hard time to tell American consumers this is a fun toy. So they used different ways of marketing strategies. Then after they became very popular, then of course toy stores and then department stores and then other stores started to sell Nintendo, and then it's now everywhere. But like when they entered the American market for the first time, they were not accepted, I guess, as they wanted, and they had to go through how they can sell this new product in the American market.
So the Euro Disney's case, it's a fairly old case at this point, and it's about when Disney first made the decision to move into Europe. And so there are a couple of issues. There's actually sort of a background issue. It tends not to be very large in the current strategy, but it's something that always comes up in discussions. Which country should they go into? So they want to go into Europe, and they had to make a decision about whether they should go into France and Spain. Those were the two major contenders. And they ended up, and an argument could be made that there might be a better cultural fit going into Spain than going into France in terms of especially human resource types of issues. But France is more centrally located, and so there's sort of a debate about customer base and how large the market is versus what the cultural fit between the company and the host country is. So that's one of the issues. The major issue that happens is that Disney goes in, it's about the first 100 days, and in the first 100 days they don't go nearly the way that they wanted. They have a lot more labor disruption than they'd expected. The employees aren't very happy with some things with Disney. The number of customers is much lower than they had projected, and there are some cultural attributes that may affect that in terms of whether or not they want to come to a U.S. park, how Disney is treated in the press. And so there are a lot of issues. The major issues that the students grapple with is how European should the park be? Should the park be a U.S. park and they don't change anything and they just, customers come and they come to a park that's maybe they speak in English, maybe the rides are exactly what they would expect in the United States. Alternatively, they could have a very European-style park. They could change the park a great deal and use many more local characters and have many more local foods and use many different languages. Or they could be very French. They could be not a European park, but a French park. And so the customers come and they speak only French. There's French food. There's a very French style. And so understanding that although customers may be coming from Scandinavia or from Britain or from Germany, they're coming to Paris where the park is, and therefore they're coming to a French experience. So one of the major issues that the students debate is, should it be a U.S. park, a French park, or a European park? How much needs to be changed? Along with this discussion of maybe they shouldn't have gone into France, they should have gone into other locations. And finally you end up with sort of just a debate about what do they need to do to change now. They've made a huge sunk investment. They're in France. They have a certain style of a park. How much do they really need to change in order to bring up their market sales in France? And the overarching sort of construct that I use to teach the case has to do with core versus periphery, in which a company needs to decide what's core to that company. And those are the things they don't change when they go abroad. Maybe they select not to go to France, but if they go to France, they have some attributes that they're just not willing to change when they go to France. And there are other things that are peripheral. If it makes sense in the local context, you might change those things in the local context, but they won't have a strategic implication for the worldwide sales of the company. So debate may come down to, should you serve wine in France? Disney and the Disney parks in the United States, they don't serve alcohol. Do you serve alcohol and accommodate French culture by serving wine? Or do you, on the other hand, say this is a U.S. park, our U.S. image is such that we don't have alcohol, it's a very family-friendly environment, and we're not going to make that accommodation. So most of the debate for the students comes down to, is alcohol serving, is that core? It's part of the core Disney values, they shouldn't change it, or is it peripheral, something that you can change as you move abroad? Similar to grooming standards. They don't allow facial hair in the United States among employees. Should they allow them in France? And so you come up with a lot of those dilemmas about what's really core that Disney shouldn't change, and what should they change to accommodate the local culture.
Starbucks in Italy is a really intriguing situation. Starbucks obviously is in 33 countries around the world, and they have over 600 Starbucks in the United Kingdom. So they came up with when they decided to go into France and to Italy, they ran into some cross-cultural problems right off the bat. Number one, England is not the country known for coffee. And so there's certainly no problem there. But when it comes to France or Italy, especially Italy, Italians will buy Coca-Cola, but they are not going to buy water from an American company. And certainly they're not going to drink coffee from an American company. And so Starbucks comes into Italy with the same format of you get your coffee and you go, where Italians have their breakfast there at the bar. And the main thing that I say at the bar, because as long as they remain at the bar, coffee is the same price by national standard at €1.80 for a cup of coffee versus €4 for a cup of coffee from Starbucks. So number one, they're not going to pay 4 times the amount for coffee for an inferior espresso to them, and in a situation where they're not allowed to be at the bar to socialize, which is naturally what they do at breakfast, during their break at 11 o'clock, and during their break at 5 o'clock before they end up going back home. So Starbucks has made all the possible mistakes that they could make by not studying the Italian coffee consumer, and despite the fact that when Starbucks has a good enough product that when Italians come to the United States and they give Starbucks a chance, they're quite impressed with the quality of the espresso. But that's while they're in the United States. When they're back in Italy, they're not going to be drinking Starbucks, they're going to be drinking the espressos at their local bar or cafe.
The Walmart case was given to us in the middle of the semester, just after the midterm, and it was about Walmart's attempt to enter the German market. They had already entered other markets very successfully in Asia and Europe, and Germany is one of the largest supermarket markets in the world. They entered very quickly, and very loudly, and it didn't translate. I think the most interesting part of that project was not knowing the end. The professor gave us the story of how it began, and we discussed it in class, and I originally thought they're going to succeed, it's going to be fine, and it was really interesting to kind of get the second half of the story and see that they didn't succeed.